Imagine waking up one morning, looking in the mirror, and instead of seeing who you are today, you start comparing yourself to who you were 20, 30, even 40 years ago. My energy was better back then, my memory was sharper, I was more successful, more respected, more needed. And slowly, without realizing it, life turns into a silent competition. Not with others, but with your own past. My dear friends, if you are over 65, this is one of the most subtle traps that steals your peace. Let me share a simple story. There was an old school principal named Mr. Sharma. In his younger days, he was respected, powerful, and full of authority. Hundreds of students stood up when he entered the room. Decisions carried his signature. People listened. After retirement, one day he visited his old school. He expected the same respect, the same attention. But things had changed. A young principal had taken his place. The staff greeted him politely, but not with the same reverence. He went home disturbed. That night, he told his wife, "I feel like I've become smaller." His wife smiled and said something profound. "You have not become smaller, you are just measuring yourself with an outdated scale." Think about that. Most of our suffering after a certain age does not come from reality, it comes from comparison with a version of ourselves that no longer exists. And here is the truth we often resist: life is not meant to be relived, it is meant to be renewed. Let me give you another example. A man named Rahim used to be a national level athlete. Strong, fast, admired. At 70, he could barely jog. Every day he would sit in the park watching young runners, feeling defeated. One day, a small boy came up to him and said, "Uncle, can you teach me how to run properly?" Rahim hesitated. "I can't run like before," he replied. The boy smiled innocently. "I didn't ask you to run, I asked you to teach." That moment changed everything. Rahim realized something powerful. Even when your body slows down, your value does not. But when we keep competing with our past self, we ignore the gifts of our present self. At 25, you may have had speed. At 45, you may have had ambition. But at 65 and beyond, you have something rare and priceless: wisdom, perspective, and depth. So why compare apples with oranges? My dear friends, peace begins the moment you stop asking, "Why am I not who I used to be?" and start asking, "Who can I become now?" Because every stage of life has its own beauty. A flower in spring is beautiful, but so is a tree in autumn with its golden leaves. Let me share a small reflection. When we hold on to our past identity too tightly, we unknowingly reject our present reality. And when we reject the present, peace disappears. Acceptance is not weakness. Acceptance is wisdom. It is understanding that life moves in chapters, not repetitions. If you keep trying to reread an old chapter, you will miss the beauty of the current one. So what can you do? First, shift your comparison. Instead of comparing yourself to your past performance, compare your present self to your present possibilities. Can you be kinder today? Can you be more patient today? Can you guide someone today? Second, redefine success. Earlier, success may have meant achievement. Now, success can mean contentment. Earlier, success may have meant recognition. Now, success can mean inner peace. And finally, learn to celebrate small joys. A peaceful morning, a heartfelt conversation, a smile from a grandchild, a moment of silence without worry. These are not small things, they are the essence of life. Let me leave you with one final thought. Your past self was built for a different season of life, but your present self is perfectly designed for this season. Stop competing, start embracing. Because peace does not come from becoming who you once were, it comes from fully accepting who you are now. And when you do that, something beautiful happens. You don't feel like you've lost anything. 1. Stop measuring life with an old version of yourself. There is a very quiet battle that many people above 65 are fighting every single day. It is not visible on the outside. There are no weapons, no noise, no enemies standing in front of them. And yet, internally, it is exhausting. It is the battle between who you are today and who you used to be. My dear friends, have you ever noticed how the mind loves to travel backwards? It rarely compares you with others at your present stage. Instead, it takes you back in time and says, "Look, this is who you were." And immediately, without permission, a feeling arises: I am not the same anymore. This is where suffering quietly begins. because life was never meant to be a constant repetition of one version of you. Life is a journey of evolving chapters. But when we keep using the same old measuring scale to judge a completely new phase, we create unnecessary pain for ourselves. Let me explain this with a simple story. There was an elderly gentleman named Mr. Iqbal. In his younger days, he was a respected government officer. People would stand up when he entered a room. His decisions carried weight. His words mattered. He was used to authority, speed, and control. After retirement, life slowed down. One day, he visited his old office just to meet colleagues. As he walked in, he expected the same respect, the same attention, the same energy. People greeted him politely, but life had moved on. A younger officer was now in charge. Meetings continued. Files were processed. Conversations moved quickly. But something inside Mr. Iqbal broke silently. On his way home, he did not speak much. His wife noticed his silence and gently asked, "What happened?" He said softly, "I feel like I no longer exist in the same way." His wife paused and replied with great wisdom, "You are still the same person, but you are expecting the world to respond to a role you no longer play." That sentence stayed with him. My dear friends, this is exactly what happens when we keep measuring our present life with our past identity. The mistake is not aging. The mistake is expecting yesterday's version of life to continue forever. Let's understand something deeply here. At 30, your value was in building. At 50, your value was in leading. At 70, your value is in guiding. But if at 70, you are still trying to measure yourself by the speed of 30, you will always feel behind. Not because you are behind, but because you are using the wrong reference point. Another beautiful real life example. There was an elderly woman named Mariam who once told her grandson, "I feel I am not as smart as I used to be." She had started forgetting small things, and this made her feel weak and less capable. Her grandson gently sat beside her and said, "Grandma, when I was a child, you didn't teach me because you could run fast or solve math quickly. You taught me because you had patience, love, and experience." Then he added, "You are still teaching me, just in a different way." At that moment, she realized something profound. Her value had not decreased, it had simply changed form. My dear friends, the problem begins when we confuse ability with identity. Your abilities may change, your energy may change, your speed may change, but your essence, your wisdom, your presence, your life experience, these do not disappear. They deepen. So instead of asking, "Why am I not like before?" perhaps a better question is, "What is life inviting me to become now?" Because peace does not come from returning to your past self. Peace comes from accepting your present self. And when you accept your present self, something beautiful happens. You stop chasing time. You stop fighting age. You stop comparing chapters. You begin to live. Practically speaking, how do we do this? First, notice when you are comparing yourself to your younger self. Just notice it without judgment. Second, gently remind yourself, that was my season then. This is my season now. Third, redefine success. Maybe success today is not how much you can do, but how peacefully you can live. And finally, celebrate what still remains, your ability to love, to reflect, to guide, to smile, to bless others. My dear friends, life is not asking you to become who you were. Life is gently inviting you to honor who you are becoming. And when you stop measuring yourself with an outdated version of you, something miraculous happens. You no longer feel like you are losing life. You begin to feel like you are finally understanding it. 2. Redefine your worth. In this stage of life, there is a silent pressure many people feel after 65, though they rarely speak about it aloud. It is the pressure of relevance. In earlier years, worth was often measured by position, by salary, by how many people needed you, or how busy your calendar was. But as life changes, those external measures begin to fade, and if one is not mindful, they may start believing that their worth is fading too. But my dear friends, worth does not retire when you retire. It only changes its language. Let me share a story. There was a man named Abdul Rahman who had worked as a successful businessman all his life. He was used to meetings, decisions, and constant movement. His identity was deeply tied to his work. After he stepped back from business at the age of 68, his phone became quieter, his schedule became empty, and slowly he began to feel invisible. One evening he sat alone and said, I am no longer useful. His granddaughter overheard him and came running. She placed a notebook in his hands and said, Grandpa, tell me stories from your life. At first, he smiled weakly. But as he began to speak, something changed. He shared lessons from his failures, wisdom from his mistakes, and stories from his journey. The child listened with wide eyes as if discovering a treasure. When he finished, she said, You are not useless. You are my teacher. In that moment, he realized something powerful. He was still valuable, but in a different way. My friends, society often celebrates productivity, but life also deeply needs presence. And presence is what becomes more valuable with age. At 65 and beyond, you may no longer build empires in the external world, but you begin to build something far more important within people: peace, understanding, and emotional stability. Think about it. A young person may bring energy into a room, but an elder brings grounding. A young mind may bring ideas, but an experienced mind brings clarity. A young life may bring speed, but an older life brings direction. So, why measure both with the same scale? Another story: a retired woman named Shabana used to feel ignored by her own family. She felt that no one listened to her anymore. One day, she decided to stop trying to prove her importance. Instead, she began quietly supporting her family without expecting recognition. She would pray for them, prepare small meals, and offer gentle advice only when asked. Slowly, something shifted. Her presence became the emotional center of the home. Not because she demanded attention, but because she offered peace. That is the transformation from seeking worth to embodying worth. My dear friends, redefining worth means releasing old definitions that no longer serve your current stage of life. You are not here to compete with younger versions of yourself. You are here to express a deeper version of yourself. When you stop asking, Am I still important in the same way? You start discovering, I am important in a new way. At this stage of life, your worth is not measured by how loud your voice is in a room, but by how calm people feel after speaking with you. It is not measured by how many tasks you complete, but by how many hearts you soothe. And perhaps the greatest shift is this. Earlier, you may have lived for achievement. Now, you can live for meaning. Achievement asks, What can I get? Meaning asks, What can I give? And in giving wisdom, patience, and presence, you discover a worth that does not decline with age, but deepens with it. So, my dear friends, do not reduce yourself because your role has changed. Redefine yourself because your wisdom has grown. You are not less, you are simply different. And in that difference lies your quiet greatness. Finally, when you accept this truth fully, you stop measuring your life by comparison and start experiencing it with gratitude. You realize that every stage has its own dignity and purpose, and nothing in your journey was ever wasted. It was all preparation for who you are becoming, so walk gently with yourself and honor every version of your life because each one shaped the wisdom you now carry into the world. And when you live with this awareness, peace becomes your natural state, no longer something you search for, but something you embody in every moment of your remaining journey of life now. You realize you have simply evolved.